Good morning to those of you on the West Coast, good afternoon to those of you tuning in from the East, and good day to those of you in another time zone. Welcome to today's webinar, Digital Transformation, the Marriage of Public Information and Technology. My name is Ryan Park, and I am the Software Marketing Associate for the Government Vertical Marketing Team at Laserfiche. I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, Danielle Gilstrat, Content Curator of Corporate Events at Laserfiche. Before we begin, I wanted to cover some housekeeping items with you on WebEx that may improve your experience. First, we have taken the liberty of muting everybody on the line to minimize any background noise. Second, if the screen is too small, you can select the diagonal icon above the screen to expand the slideshow. At the same time, you can utilize the Q&A chat box located in the lower right-hand corner of the screen to ask us questions or let us know if there are any technical issues with the platform. In the next slide, we'll go ahead and show this webinar and the reason why it's particularly timely. And that's because many government organizations are seeking ways to improve citizen services with efficient and transparent governance. At Laserfiche, we hear about the need to streamline and automate public-facing processes year-round from our customers. In fact, it's one of the most common questions we hear about. From the perspective of state and local government, all agencies are responsible for complying with regulations, which can be a difficult and daunting task. Whether you fall within the realm of information managers or information guardians, the need to provide critical public service is there. Even though government agencies want to provide this critical service in an efficient manner, a combination of hefty requests coupled with limited time and staff can make the process of delivering services very challenging. As one of our customers used to say, people often think the government is hiding information. It's not that we're hiding it, we just can't always find it. And that's why we're excited to have two phenomenal representatives from the city of Ithaca join us. Julie Holcomb, the city clerk, will talk about the information management side of things, and Alan Kerosene, the senior network administrator, will talk about the information guardian side of things. The city of Ithaca was not only featured in a government technology article for streamlining its special events permitting service, but received the 2016 Top Digital City Award along with the 2017 Laserfiche Run Smarter Award for Outstanding Public Service Initiatives. All of this was accomplished when they broke new ground and merged the clerk's office with the IT department to form the Public Information Technology team. By leveraging technology solutions, they were able to create an easy way for the public to request documents, which has resulted in reducing processing time by 7,000 hours in the first year and an overall improvement in citizen services. Today, Julie and Alan will discuss ways for creating opportunities to rethink, redesign, and improve business processes. Next, talking about avoiding pitfalls by utilizing strategies for getting people on board with change and keeping the momentum going. Also, the efficiencies the city of Ithaca has achieved by using this approach, benefiting both employees and constituents. And finally, they'll close with some advice and lessons learned for other organizations looking to implement a similar process. At this time, I'll pass the ball to the city of Ithaca to talk about these items in greater detail. So you can go ahead and take it away, Julie and Alan.
Well, thanks for that awesome intro, Ryan. We really appreciate it. So we would like to welcome you to the city of Ithaca. To describe where we live a little bit, we'll tell you that we're an extremely educated and engaged community with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and information. Being a college town, home to Cornell University and Ithaca College, we have a median age of 22. Our residents expect their government to be as technically savvy as they are, which is one of our largest challenges. Back in 2005, we started exploring ways that we could digitize and protect our records while making them as accessible as possible. We were introduced to Laserfiche through our municipal code vendor, General Code Publishers. Initially, we used the software primarily as an internal tool with very limited access to staff, and that went on for years. In 2013, we joined the Tompkins Shared Services Electronic Records Group, the acronym TSER. So TSER is a group of municipalities in our county, Tompkins County, who have signed on to a shared services agreement under the administration of Tompkins County. By entering into this agreement, we were able to surrender our existing licenses and gained access to an upgraded version of Laserfiche, increased server capacity, and a team of IT professionals to collaborate with. In 2014, my office, the City Clerk's office, merged with the Department of Information Technology, and we became the Department of Public Information and Technology. This merger formalized the marriage between records and information management and technology, and it vastly broadened our horizon of opportunities. So this slide probably looks very familiar to most of you. It's how most traditional governments are organized. You have the clerk's office that serves as the information managers and the IT departments that serve as the information guardians. For our purposes today, we'll point out that the traditional split between the custodian of Laserfiche records and retention policies and the setup and maintenance of Laserfiche servers, repositories, licensing structures, etc. So with all of that, who's the boss? The position of clerk is time-honored. In most cases, it was one of the first positions created by local governments. The IT folks are considered the new kids on the block. Both departments have the same goals: to protect important government documents and make them accessible to staff and the public. And both have laws, policies, and best practices that govern how they implement those goals. But both tackle issues from different perspectives. The clerks are used to working with members of the public, elected officials, interdepartmental colleagues, and they field questions and complaints all day long. IT folks work mainly with their internal customers, the entire workforce, and they field questions and complaints all day long. So what's the difference? I have a confession to make. I have been consumed by this slide since I first saw this graphic. It was kind of an aha moment for me when I could finally define some of the frustrations that I've been experiencing within our organization. Even though we've made great strides in communicating and working together, our organization was, and still is to some degree, divided on many levels. One of the most noticeable divides, however, was the divide between the information managers and the information guardians. Before our merger, our two departments had differing goals, different expectations for timelines, different management styles, and personality conflicts. But, I don't really think that our organization is unique in this aspect. I like to compare us to another very famous city, the Emerald City. Meet the clerk.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
So I'll ask, which witch are you? On a good day, I like to think I'm Glenda. Of course I can help you find the records that you've been looking for from the 1800s. But on a bad day, I know that I have other tendencies too. If you want me to find your contracts, you have to file them with me in the first place. And that goes for your little department head too. I really do try to keep these comments to the voice inside of my head, but sometimes they just slip out, so I have to soften them with a clenched smile. And I think most clerks can kind of appreciate that. And I'm sure you're going to recognize this fine fellow, the information gatekeeper.
Nobody can see the great Oz, nobody not know how.
Nobody gets by. The gatekeeper, this is a person who will throw obstacles at you and will not compromise on solutions. Things have to be done their way, and it's not open for discussion. No way, no how. how I describe at least our IT staff in general.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
They just have some kind of mystical powers. I can't explain it. Sometimes they simply walk in the room, and the thing that you've been struggling with for over an hour and has you in a fit of Donald Duck-level temper tantrum rage is magically fixed, even though you clicked that same button 100 times already. But then there are other times when some of the policies that they've put in place to protect the network infrastructure and keep systems secure can seem a little excessive and restrictive.
The great Oz has spoken.
And the great Oz has spoken. And no, that is absolutely not possible. You may not do that. Then you have your workforce, and that can range with users like the Scarecrow.
I'm a failure because I haven't got brains.
If I only had a brain. Now, I know that this seems a little mean, and really, it's absolutely not meant to be. However, I think if we're honest, we can all admit to feeling frustrated with our coworkers from time to time. Let's face it, not everyone has embraced the digital age, and some have no intention to. That can create challenges as you try to automate and streamline your processes. There are others that are so totally immersed in technology that their critical thinking and reasoning skills have been softened, and that creates other challenges. The rest of us are stuck somewhere in between. Now, you may also be familiar with the sentimental and the wistful Tin Man.
The tinsmith forgot to give me a heart. No heart? No heart. All hollow.
All hollow, no heart. You remember the good old days when we had WordPerfect and it was so much fun to hit F6 to bold and F8 to underline? Or I really miss our old group-wise email system. It was so much better than what we have now. Now, mind you, these are the same people who complained that these programs were terrible and didn't do anything that they needed them to do. But then you've also got our friend, the Lion. Who's almost combative. Who dare change my printer settings? Why are my desktop icons in a different order? Well, I'll fight him with one hand tied behind my back. And don't forget our lovable leadership teams.
This is a day of independence for all the munchkins and their descendants.
You may have department heads or elected leaders walking around saying, as mayor of the Munchkin City, in the county in the land of Oz, this is how things are going to work in my department. It doesn't matter what other departments are doing or what best practices are. It doesn't matter that we're a single organization implementing multiple missions. I am the boss of my department, and this is what's going to happen. Look, let's face it, every organization needs dreamers, but they also need logistical nuts and bolts folks. This is where the city, in our case, the city clerk's office and the IT department got jammed up in terms of personality conflicts. We had a dreamer flashing visions of sugar plums and automated systems in front of staff and department heads and elected officials. And we had a realist, who was me, by the way, in case you can't tell, who was saying, hold on, wait a minute. Where is the money coming from? Departments don't have scanners. Staff can't stand at the copy machine all day and scan documents. We don't have the number of licenses needed to accomplish these goals. Who's going to do all the work required to obtain these results? It's great to dream the dream, but if you're sharing it with others, you better have a plan on how you're going to turn that dream into a reality. Now this slide makes us us look very proactive and mature. You know, the city of Ithaca recognized these challenges and broke new ground to surmount them. But what really happened was this. You know, multiple departments started complaining to the mayor. The infighting that was occurring over which tools, like Laserfiche or our website and other tools, which tools were considered internal information tools and should be controlled by the IT department, and which tools were considered public information tools and should be controlled by the clerk's office, was creating issues for the entire organization. At the same time, New York State instituted a property tax cap, which seriously impacted the city's budget. So the mayor decided to merge 6 departments into 3. The merger of the city clerk's office and the Department of Information Technology was one of those mergers. So if this is so great, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, conceptually, this was a brilliant idea. Logistically, it was really difficult to implement. The culture of each department was very different. You know, the clerk's office was very used to a culture of, oh, you need something? Well, wait a minute. Let me, throw down everything I'm doing right now and let me serve your needs immediately right now. While the IT culture was more like, oh, you have a problem? Okay, well, we'll put it on the list, and then we'll prioritize it against all the other issues that we have on the list, and we'll see where you come out. You know, our staff meetings were really painful. They were wrought with challenges and a fair amount of negativity because of these culture differences. You know, the clerk staff didn't care about computer replacements and software upgrades, and the IT staff didn't care about pending legislation. Although I should have gotten suspicious, I found it a little odd at how engaged they were when we were discussing how to implement our new urban chicken registration process. The next morning, we came in, and our office was proliferated with paper chicken cutouts and corny knock-knock jokes about why the chicken crossed the road. To get their permit, of course, but they were a cluck short. You know, I tell you all of this because you can't underestimate the power of a sense of humor in bringing people together. And small actions like this helped us gel as a department, as a blended department, faster than any management plans could have. You know, it took us time to find our middle ground. And we came together around discussions about records management, scanning techniques and scanning equipment, identifying which records were candidates for the Laserfiche public portal versus the city's website, or how workflow automations could help us work more efficiently. And, there were 100 other topics that were relevant to both of our disciplines. Now I'm going to hand it over to Alan Kerrison.
Great. Thank you, Julie. One of the items you'll see not only is part of our 2 different mojos, if you will, in what had been 2 departments. The clerk office is used to having ideas that are well thought out and articulated and really driving home the point. So Julie just did a fantastic job. Thank you for that. In the IT side, we like to fly a little more by the seat of our pants, so I'll try to stay coherent for you and keep us on track. But we all have fun with this, and we like to have fun together. And as we talk about what our automation processes were and the benefits from it, I'll start by saying it was a lot of fun. We mentioned that our county had a shared service agreement, the group we call Teaser, and together with our intermunicipal partners, we were able to train, share tips and tricks, workflow modules, and started creating a real collaborative momentum. We were able to use that to improve transparency to public access information through our public portal, and we created secure department folders and interdepartmental shared folders in our repository. We were able to dramatically widen our record searches every time we added a new record series into the repository, and what once was held by a single department is now accessible by others. We no longer have to dig through those boxes of records in our basement or attic to deal with the water damage or moldy, rodent-infested records. Luckily, the IT side did not have to do much of that, by the way.
Yeah, that was mostly the clerk's department.
As Ryan said at the beginning, and we'll go into a little more detail, our first and most, I think, successful automation project was our FOIL, or Freedom of Information Request process. After attending the first Laserfiche Power conference that we had the opportunity to go to, we were inspired and anxious to tackle our first real workflow project. We reviewed a number of internal processes and decided to select one that would have a great impact on the organization, the Freedom of Information Law requests. As New York State's FOIL law became stricter, our city attorney's office took over the task of coordinating the response to those requests. And as you may have experienced, those requests for information can easily find themselves on the bottom of a work pile on your desk. We have 11 city departments located in 8 separate facilities, and although we had many responsive documents in electronic format and a robust email system, city staff was constantly printing off documents, sending back hard copies through interoffice mail, and then depending on when the requests came in and the timing of mail runs, this practice could take several days instead of minutes and would waste precious response time. In many of our cases, the hard copy documents were then being scanned back into electronic documents, creating multiple redundancies and copies of the same data. After we successfully tackled that automation project and had success with our FOIL request process, we tackled several more, as you can see from this list. But all of them had common goals in mind. We wanted to increase the ease and flexibility of making the request or fulfilling the application by the members of the public. We wanted to ensure timely communications throughout the process, both with the requester and the internal team of people that would have to work on that request. We wanted to reduce or remove redundant or extra data collection and process steps. And let's not forget that the entire team needs to be well trained. Nothing like putting someone in charge of a new process or in the middle of it and then not giving them what they need to use it. That certainly is a recipe for disaster, and we worked hard to not fall into that pitfall. So as you can see, our FOIL process alone conservatively saved over 7,000 staff hours each year and reduced the average processing time by 35%. Constituents no longer had to commute to City Hall to submit a paper application or supplemental documents after the fact. All the departments could concurrently perform their review, making the approval time much faster. And this process has resonated with the outside world. The city was fortunate enough to, throughout this process, receive the 2016 Top Digital City Award and the 2017 Run Smarter Award. And for anyone who's been to Empower or plans on going to Empower, that is your gold standard there. You want to win that award. You want to get up on stage, get that handshake, and get your picture taken. It's a blast. That aside, what you're really doing is being recognized for making things better, whether it be internal, whether it be external. You're making processes better, faster, easier, more efficient, all of the above. So let's talk about where the city falls then on the digital transformation model that Laserfiche has outlined very clearly at the previous Empower conference, also at the recent Empower Spark online event. The transformation model has 5 steps. Unfortunately for the city of Ithaca, we sat on those first 2 for much too long. We first received Laserfiche in its early form for us, the city, in 2005. We had some early documents digitized, scanned into the system, and loosely placed in a repository. And unfortunately, that's where we pretty much stayed. Some new documents would go in from time to time, but as Julie outlined earlier, this separation we had from the clerks who needed to get information in here so they can manage it properly, and the IT office who wanted to guard the system, if you will, protect the data, but also control how the system was running, had difficulty agreeing on what those methodologies would be. And year after year passed with us not being able to progress farther in this model. We didn't know the 5 steps at the time, but we knew we were stagnating. Then our merger came along. The PIT department was created, and in the last 3 years, between 2014 and 2017, we've been able to not only increase the amount of content in the system, but automate those processes that we just discussed and streamline a lot of those processes by going back, reviewing how they're running, and then tweaking them to make them more efficient and even easier for those involved. Notice we are still in that streamline process. We haven't quite got to the transform yet, but we always like to have something to shoot for. So we see ourselves moving along this digital transformation model year after year after year as we do more and more projects. And I should note, this is presented right now as a linear model. You go from step 1 to step 2 and so on, all the way to step 5. But I think it's probably best to think about it as a circular model. You're bringing in your documents, you're organizing your content, that's fine. You get to do some automation and some streamlining, but you still have to go back and bring in more content, organize it in a way that makes more sense or needs to incorporate the new types of information you're bringing in. It's not just paper documents anymore that are now being digitized. It's all sorts of media. You have things coming from body cameras and surveillance videos and electronic plans that may be coming from architects and consultants. You have scientific studies and other things. And you have to then figure out how to automate those, streamline those processes. So you want to move along this digital transformation model, but you're always continuing to go back to the beginning and include more things. So let's talk about, in just a little more detail, this phase 3, the automation, because that's the one we have spent a lot of our efforts on lately. The idea of phase 3 is very straightforward, I think, in concept. Automate. Take something you're doing by hand, make it a little more automatic. Sounds good. The rewards are clear. You can increase your productivity and eliminate a lot of manual tasks. You can standardize your mapped out processes, and you can have easier integration between applications and simplified compliance that address various regulatory concerns. Now, it's not all rewards. We'll get into a few of those in a moment, but these are clearly things that you'll get out of it and very easy for your management, your staff, and everyone in between to understand why you'd want to automate your processes. Now, streamlining is where we are in the process of really starting to take a look at some of our automation. The form server, and I'll let Ryan talk about that more either after this, and I know there's other webinars that deal with this, has wonderful dashboards now that talk about how your processes are running. Is it stagnating at a certain point? Do you have a certain person or department that's doing a heavier share of work than another? Is it getting stuck in a first approval phase, or is it later on down the line, or is everything flowing smoothly? These metrics are available through the Laserfiche Forms system in order to then change that automation behind the scenes in a way that's going to help whatever your stumbling blocks may be. Now, I say stumbling blocks, that's not really fair. It may just be, where the roadblocks or hiccups are. A person can only do so much work. Maybe you need to assign things elsewhere. Nothing wrong with that. You just have to have the information to deal with that and take care of it and then monitor it again. So the automation and streamlining will always work together. And then transforming your processes really begin to predict what's coming. Use the information you have to be able to work towards how you're going to do business in the future. Now, for a lot of us, it's a great concept, and I'm happy to admit the city is not there. It'd be nice to say, oh yeah, we're doing that too, but we're really not, because you really have to have a firm grasp on everything you're already doing. And until your documents are really coming in and you have departmental buy-in across your organization and management buy-in and really the whole organization working towards this one end, it's hard to predict and change your future business. But it is a great goal, and I'm sure a lot of you are much further along with that than we are. We hope to catch up to you at some point, hopefully in a not too distant future. So what did we learn as we not only merged departments, but automated these processes, tried to put information out there in a little easier way? Well, we always do what we always did cannot sustain itself anymore. I'm sure most of you are like us. Declining numbers of staff, declining budgets, tax caps or other items that are stopping you from being able to invest in either core infrastructure for the technology itself, or, as Julie pointed out, the need for scanners or staff time to get those documents in the system in the first place. But by always putting those to the back burner, you just can't sustain the organization moving on. If you're fortunate like we are, you have partners you can collaborate with. Now, these might be partners within your own organization. In our case, we were lucky that we have other municipal partners that are in a much similar situation. They have same needs for records and automation and are willing to work together. So we found great shared resources that way. It's a great way to share your training with them and vice versa, and to simplify processes across the board. One thing we did learn, however, when trying to streamline a lot of these processes is that sometimes staff will utilize them unnecessarily. And let me explain that sentence a little more clearly. You hope as you move these processes forward, for example, when we started our Freedom of Information and FOIL process, that your staff in each department that's involved will honor the process. They will log in, they will review the request, they will submit their documents to the email address or the repository site where they're supposed to. They will do it in a timely manner. The person responsible for monitoring that and moving them to the next step will do so in a timely manner. That's what you want. However, you may find that, gee, why am I putting record series A, B, and C through this whole process when this is clearly going to be a public record? The request comes in, and yeah, this is public data, no doubt about it. So sometimes you have to let your staff be free enough to say, you know what, why don't we just put this out there on the public portal? We have it, no reason not to provide it, and then we can stop future requests coming in. Make it easier for the public to get that data. So empower them to know when that's something that's worth doing. Sometimes people forget that, and we forget that too, because as the IT person, and someone tells me they're having trouble or a process is stuck, you know, I'm immediately thinking workflow, diagram, follow the arrows. But sometimes you do need to step back and say, well, we don't need to bother with those steps. Let's make sure this workflow can finish and the records get where they need to go, but let's put them out in the public portal or wherever the case may be for the next time. Making forms, as another lesson learned, is very easy to do with the Laserfiche system. However, it can lead to abuses. So be open to trial and error, and you may end up solving the wrong problems or uncover others that have been successfully hidden. Let me elaborate on that for a moment as well. So when we first issued our Freedom of Information form, we really wanted to make it as quick and easy as possible for the requester, the member of the public. We got just the basic contact information and then what the request was. We didn't ask for a lot of extra data. We didn't make the form long, and as we later learned, we made it so easy that a person hypothetically, which is in our case not hypothetically, could submit that form, hit the back button on their browser, change a date, for example, in their request, submit it again, back, change a date, submit it again, and we actually had a user in our system, a member of the public, who was able to submit over 24 requests in the course of a minute. These are valid FOIL requests, but we made the process so easy for them that it was led to that person abusing the system. We went back and made some changes on the form that still allowed that person to submit any request they wanted, but they had to go through the process in a complete method each time. If you're just a casual user, you may submit one FOIL request ever. You're not going to notice the difference. If you're someone who's a frequent flyer, and I'm sure most of you out there in the clerk's office are nodding right now, yes, we know our frequent flyers. You're not stopping their ability, you're just making them say, hey, do I really want to submit this? Yes, I'm willing to take the 2 minutes it takes me to fill out the form and submit it. It's funny what automation brings forward that you would never have thought of when designing. So what's ahead for the City of Ithaca? Well, marriage license processing is coming for us, and that one, I'm happy to say, is just mere weeks away. I'm sure across the country there's very specific methodologies for that. I know New York State has a very detailed, data-driven form, lots of information to collect and print out in a very specific way. Our reseller, our partner, General Code Publishers, has designed a wonderful form and automation for us to do that process. We're also about to release a application process for boards and committees. We're looking forward to tackling our contract management process. As Julie had mentioned, this is one that's very time-intensive, currently very paper-heavy, very top-level review, meaning where is it in the process, very hard to track right now. So we'll be cracking open the Laserfiche Forms Business Process Library, starting with their contract management tools and taking it from there. And then we're also anxious to use the Forms ability to use online payments through PayPal now. Additionally, our teaser group, our collaboration group, continues to work on court records, building permits, and is currently digitizing a lot of large-scale maps and plans. Quite often I leave a meeting with our teaser groups going, oh, you know, they already did this. We hadn't even thought about that one yet. Let me copy their forms and copy their workflow and get started on it for us. So what's in progress? This is a short list, but we see it as a continually evolving, growing, and hopefully never a short list. We want to have a lot of work on this one coming forward. I like to be kept busy. Julie's nodding her head. We want to know that people are taking advantage of this system, and that's what's coming for us.
Yeah, Alan definitely has job security down for many years because, you know, like you, I think once you or your users get a taste of this, all you want is more. You know, what can I do next? What's the next project? So, you know, to bring us back to where we started, you know, 45 minutes ago, the moral of the story for us is that it's a long journey down that yellow brick road, but you really have the power to bring about organizational change. You just need to learn how to navigate through it in a manner that works for your agency. You know, it's very easy to get frustrated and to get down about all of the things that you have not accomplished. But take a minute from time to time to write down or at least think about all the things that you have accomplished. And I think you'll be staggered by the amount, and I would encourage you to do that. I think it's a great thing to do. I think that tools like Laserfiche and all the forms and the workflow automations are great tools to help you on that path. So we hope that you'll take advantage of every opportunity that you have. So now I think we're ready to turn it back over to you, Ryan, and see if people have any questions for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julie and Alan. I was certainly clucking, or should I say laughing, just throughout the entire presentation itself, and both of you have really shone a bright light around the different types of use cases that surround the solution itself. And in the next slide, the attendees here can also be able to contact me with any questions or, regarding this particular webinar itself. And before I jump into the Q&A section, I want to give everyone just about a couple of minutes for them to also type in their questions as well within the Q&A chat box, which can be found in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And on that note, Alan and Julie, you both mentioned Empower itself. Empower is an annual conference that does take place towards the beginning of the year, and we have an early bird for that at empower.laserfiche.com, and that early bird registration ends on November 17th, and so if anyone is interested, they can certainly go ahead and check out the webpage there. And at the same time, also check out Julie and Alan, who will also be speaking at Empower 2018. And on that note, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this concept of a self-service model and how this can also save a lot of staff time and resources in the long run. And Alan, you mentioned that there were certainly different areas for improvement and ways that can reduce a lot of that staff time and resources along the way. And so the self-service model using the public portal is something that organizations and municipalities have found as a really great tool to allow the citizens themselves to be able to search for those public records that can be made readily available to individuals, giving the citizens themselves the ability to conduct that level of search and to allow city staff to also focus on other priorities as well. And so that certainly has been really useful in municipalities that are utilizing public portals itself. And so it looks as though we are going to go ahead and get started with our first question here. And I'll go ahead and allow you, Julie or Alan, to go ahead and address this first question. And it's going to be around how government organizations are looking to optimize citizen services, and more specifically, what's some advice you would impart to professionals looking to move towards digitization, automation, or streamlined approach?
I think I would say, start small, because it's a change not only for the public, but it's a change for your staff as well. So, and change is hard in organizations. Anybody that works in government knows, those wheels turn very slowly, but they do turn, so don't give up. But just start small and pick something that's, a low-hanging fruit, so to speak, a quick win, and then let your staff get used to it, and then build upon it, and then build upon it. Let them get used to it and build upon it. I know that the big processes are flashy and they're exciting, but they can also be overwhelming, and that's a lesson that I learned when we rolled out our special event permitting process. It's big, and it is comprehensive, and I loved it. I was the administrator of it. It was it should have saved me lots of hours in processing those, but it was overwhelming to my special events team. And, they had to learn a new system. They had a new login and a new password, and they had to remember those, and they had to go into the system, and they had to find the applications, and they had to comment on them. And, there was a lot of change, and they were reluctant to do that, and they couldn't remember how to get in. They couldn't remember how to find it. And I would write down very detailed step-by-step instructions for them. But it was simply too much. And so in that, collaboration model that Alan was talking about with our teaser group and our county IT folks, we had talked about that, and they actually mentioned a solution to a different process that worked fabulously for us in special events. And so we were able to make that process more simple for the users that had to provide input by just creating a system whereby all they had to do was open up an email, and they had PDF documents of the applications and a quick little form to fill out. I've reviewed this permit, and I have no comments. Check the box and hit send, and it worked out much better. So my advice is to start small, let people assimilate to it, and then start building from there.
Excellent. I think you definitely brought up some excellent points in terms of really turning this into a more of an ease of use situation. One of our other attendees actually has a question, and once again, I'll leave it up to you, Alan or Julie, to answer this. How did either of you overcome the argument of, quote unquote, we don't have the manpower to dedicate to scanning? And so I was curious, or one of our attendees was curious if you'd be happy to address this.
I'll jump in first. I certainly resonate with that sentiment. We didn't have the staff power to do that either. And, so we did what we could, but that's also why we got stuck in that section of the transformation model for so long. What really helped is that in New York State, we have a grant program where you can write records management grants that will give you money to purchase equipment or to hire staff for short-term projects, and they're very detailed. You have to have your work plan solidly laid out as to what you're going to accomplish, how you're going to do it, what vendors you're going to use, and all of that. And when we partnered with Tompkins County, they were able to secure larger grants because they were collaborative grants. And so we were able to get a lot of our documents scanned using grant funding or bringing in, interns or whatever to help. Now, I'll qualify that with saying quality control is vitally important. And so you don't want just anybody scanning your documents. You really want to pay attention to that. And you want to work with your IT folks, and you want to make sure that your scanner settings are set appropriately, and that you understand all the tools and options that are available to you, especially with a product like Laserfiche that has so many features in it. It's very feature-rich. So, you want to pay attention to things like file sizes and all that, especially if you're scanning documents to put in a public portal so that the public can say, can serve themselves, because you have to think about the end users and the equipment that they'll be using to try to open up these documents. So that's one of the ways that we overcame that.
Yeah, and let me also add to that the idea of think about your records retention. If you have a data set that needs to only stick around for 1, 3, 6 years, is it really worth trying to backfill your system with them? Maybe not. Maybe you just do those records moving forward and scanning them as you're processing them. That way it's not this overwhelming task. Then you take your permanent records or your 10 or 25-year retention, the things that you really need to maintain for a period of time, and then start tackling those. But again, I will say tackle them in small batches. It can be very overwhelming to look in your records room and see shelf after shelf after shelf of boxes that may need to get done. Well, just do one at a time. That will get you there. And I just want to elaborate, as Julie mentioned, when it comes to your scanning and your file sizes, this is going to be important no matter what. But as you're thinking about any document that's going to go on your public portal, really think about your image resolution, your color, do things in black and white if you can, actually. Keep those file sizes small. Something that you bring into Laserfiche and make a Laserfiche page or a TIFF image is going to just render right in the browser. Other types of documents, if you're bringing in Word or Excel documents or some image files or videos, those are going to need to download to the user's computer first. And you can't assume everyone's trying to access you on a standard high-speed internet desktop. And if it's going to take them more than a few seconds, 10, 15 seconds on the outside to get the file, maybe it's not as friendly as it needed to be. So also know who those records are going to be viewed by when you're spending the time to scan. Because and we ran into this semi-early in this process too. Worst thing you can do is finally feel the satisfaction of getting a record set done to then realize it either needs to be done again or it's not as useful as you thought and you got to run it through a whole nother process. So yeah, Julie said it well. Get those settings just right. Really know how long they're going to take for someone to access once they're in the system before you start chomping off those bigger bits of files as well.
Excellent. And certainly, I'm really glad to see that, New York is really open to this idea of shared services, and it's something that I would also encourage many of their, the different attendees here to also look into as well, to see, how if the state itself is looking at more of a shared services model or more of the centralization approach as well. And Alan, you definitely touched upon this great idea around the trial and error aspect of it as well, and identifying areas to help make sure that the process is flowing smoothly and that there is a mitigation of any of those types of risks or errors for future references as well.
Ryan, did I say trial and error? No, we knew everything every step of the way the whole time.
Exactly, and that was the really great part of it. And ultimately, we certainly are glad that you were able to reference the digital transformation model in terms of mapping out a lot of these different steps along the way as well, which I'm sure is going to be helpful for other individuals who are trying to find, where they actually stand on along their digital journey here. One question that we also received from another attendee was around integration, and so they were curious, in terms of the software itself, can the software integrate with other softwares? And so I'll go ahead and turn this over to you, maybe, Alan.
Yep, I'll be happy to take that. And I'm going to give you a resounding, it depends. So what are you doing with it? First and foremost, at this time, the Laserfiche suite of products is web-based as well as client-based. So depending on what your users are doing, you may have certain thoughts as to what you're going to implement in your system. If someone's doing a lot of scanning, a lot of entry or input into the system, at this time the client may still be a little better. I know over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, probably not that long, I don't know if Ryan's cringing that I said 3 years, it's likely all going to be web-based or just as easy, or if not easier, to do it through the web. For your general user, web-based tools are fine. That said, what are you trying to integrate? Is it you have records in a personnel system, for example, that you want to save into your repository, financial records, payroll, could be permitting or tax map or property information. So some of it's going to depend on the system itself. We have a financial system, for example, that under no circumstance will allow any kind of connector to it in any manner. There's no ODBC connections, there's no backdoor connections, you're in their client or you're not getting it. Most other tools, however, will allow you to use an ODBC or a database, a direct database connection, if you will, directly to Laserfiche. You can set that up in the background that your form server and your workflow server can both see and access, so they can read data directly and actually append data into those systems if required. A little more straightforward, a little easier, especially for your software tools that are more web-based, is the Laserfiche connector product. If you haven't seen it, it's a small client that runs on the individual's computer, and you, through point and click, so no programming, no need to know what ODBC is or have background database access, just point and click, you're bringing up your web application, you're bringing up Laserfiche, and you're pointing on the screen where you want the one to talk to the other, and you're creating a link, if you will, that the user then has a button on their screen somewhere or a key combination, a hotkey combination. So, for example, you can be in your HR system and you want to see training records that have already been migrated into Laserfiche. You bring up the person's name and you hit the key combination or the database connector for employee training. It brings up your Laserfiche screen, whether it be web or client. It automates your login to it and then brings up that record series in Laserfiche. So you're not constantly having two separate windows, retyping information from one screen to the next. So that Laserfiche connector is a great tool for that, and it works with more and more products every time a new update comes out for it. So I'd say that's your best and easiest approach, but it really depends on what type of system you're working from. I know Laserfiche Tech have some really good support people in terms of how to make some of these connections work. I'll also point out that Laserfiche Answers is a great website. Chances are someone has done either exactly what you're looking for or a very similar system to get you some ideas as to how you can link the two together.
Absolutely, and you certainly brought up some great points, and I'd like to also point out that, you know, we've worked with Alan and in terms of, you know, him providing a great feature request when it came to utilizing this JavaScript library as well, and that's part of this. That's part of the business process library functionality within Laserfiche Forms, and so this is a really great tool for individuals who are looking to download or to find, you know, pre-existing or pre-built processes as templates to look to see if this is something that would be beneficial for their organization to optimize citizen services in more effective means. And so Alan has certainly brought up some really great points and has really been able to dive a lot deeper into the use of connector and also around this whole discussion for integration itself, and so thank you for that. And it looks as though we have maybe a chance for one or two more questions, and so I'll go ahead and shoot this question over to both of you. This question is asking if you use WebLink within your city and what type of documents do you publish there if you are using it?
Well, WebLink is indeed what we're calling our public portal, so we absolutely do. Anything we can make public. I guess I'll let Julie take that more. I know we've put in a lot of minutes from past boards, committees, common council, et cetera, but Julie, I'll let you take that over.
We do, and I will say that's probably our most popular record set that we have in there, and I know as a staff person, that's the one I utilize the most. We have our Common Council minutes in there from, I think, 1929 or whatever forward, and so, you know, research projects, which used to take me hours, if not days, I can now do, you know, in maybe 30 minutes or something like that. Because I'm able to just, with some key search criteria, go in and I can find all the legislation that I'm looking for. So we paid particular attention to those record sets. Board of Public Works and some of our other boards and committees, it's now, if you're researching a particular topic, you can find all the hits from all the different committees it was discussed in, and for clerks in the audience, you know, they're going to love that, I can guarantee it. We also have things like affidavits of publication. We're required to publish certain legal notices. We have some maps and plans in there. We have a beautiful set of historical maps that we partnered with an outside agency who created these for us. They are from the 1800s, they're hand-drawn, they're color, and they render spectacularly through Laserfiche. It's really awesome. So we have a number of different data sets in there, and again, we're constantly asking ourselves, you know, should this be just in our internal repository, or is this something the public, number one, should have access to or is interested in having access to? So we're constantly updating that WebLink portal.
And let me also add that the nice thing about the WebLink portal is you can set it up with multiple profiles. So we have one that is this public portal that we've just been describing. We have another that actually does go to a login instead of just going to the data itself, where we can have more of our organizational kind of read-only users. They're never adding anything to the system, but they need to sometimes look up stuff. So we'll take that public information and also add, based upon their login, our internal documents that we've now set up as kind of a shared resource for internal policies and processes, things that will grow over time as well. So you can really define that web link in multiple manners for multiple audiences, which is nice.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I think because we are a minute short before the actual timeline itself, I wanted to really thank both of you for your time and effort in terms of preparing this presentation and for giving such an excellent speech. And so on behalf of us here, Danielle and I wanted to also thank you, and I'm sure that many of the attendees here really appreciated what both of you had to say. And if you haven't been to Ithaca, I would certainly recommend it as well. They have the beautiful waterfalls as well as the different lakes as well, and so I would highly recommend if you haven't visited yet. And at the same time, we also have a public records request webinar that will be taking place on September 27th, and so you will be able to learn more about it in the post-webinar email that will be sent along with the recording. And so if you have any questions or any concerns, you can go ahead and feel free to email me at ryan.park@laserfiche.com, and we can go ahead and help to facilitate it from there. And so with that being said, thank you both of you for, once again, a wonderful presentation, and we'll go ahead and end it here.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. We'll see you at Empower.
See you at Empower.